This is just a few of the projects that I completed this year. I'll only be going into detail about the ones that I think had the most impact on my year overall. In September, I was still very unsure about how to identify my practice, but through this year I've managed to narrow down and further develop my interests. This development began around the Happiness Project, and continued straight through into the Wordplay Project, taking a little inspiration from the Friday Project as well. Though I identify these projects separately, they are effectively different stages of a continuing idea. The outcome of the Shelter Project was a set of alcoholic makeup. In theory, if this makeup was applied, it would release alcohol into the bloodstream. This was a result of me looking at physical entities as emotional shelter, as well as the human skin's absorbent qualities. Throughout this project, I was looking at the sculptures of David Mack and Mark Kilner for inspiration, as well as the portraits of Andy Diaz-Hope. Although no visual similarities can be seen between their work and my own, I feel as though they heavily influenced the outcome. I would not consider this project a success overall, as the communication and presentation of the final outcome wasn't great. However, most of my work has been purely visual, so it was very enlightening being able to use the sense of smell in my work. I also learnt a lot about the type of work I wish to produce, as I considered looking into my own skin condition and the tablets I take for it being my own personal shelter. However, I did not follow this direction as I was concerned that I would alienate the viewer. Following the Shelter Project, I decided to pick up where a previous project had left off, and following tutorial guidance began to look at animation. I came across the 10,000 Trees competition, which seemed to be an ideal platform with which to base some ideas around. Although the competition asked for a poster, I began to get ideas that would work well as an animation in my head, and decided to realise them. I experimented with different media with which to make the animation, as well as different types of sounds that could be included. After putting my ideas into a storyboard format, and then putting sounds to this storyboard, I realised that the characters I created were too childlike for what was intended to be a more adult audience. I also realised that animation involves an awful lot of time and planning. This brief trial of practising animation has led me to realise that I do not have the passion to back up what would be such a large time investment. Realising I needed more of a direction for my practice, I looked at something that I'd been meaning to for a while, which was creating small doses of happiness in people's lives. While on holiday in Italy over the summer, I came across the Lock Up the Love custom, in which couples fix a padlock onto a fence or some railings, and as long as the padlock can't be removed, their love will stay forever. This custom heavily influenced the Happiness Project, as did James Cortie's Stamps of Mass Destruction. I chose to spread my messages of happiness on mass-produced items that are free to obtain. Discovering an intervention on these items that had been mass-produced in their thousands would hopefully make the finder feel more special and unique. The site project became an extension from this, and I found myself using stickers to convey the simplest method of happiness, a smiley face. I chose to change from a message to a smiley face, as I did some research into the human behaviour and communication, and discovered that phrases such as "have a nice day" are seen so often they can sometimes fail to have much of an effect. Although it was quite difficult to determine the reactions to most of my interventions, of the ones that I was able to observe, I did see the odd confused face and smile, allowing me to consider this project a success. Just before Christmas was the deadline for the sketchbook project. The scheme is run by Art House Co-op, and the idea is that you fill in a sketchbook and send it back to them, where it then goes on a tour around America before residing permanently in the Brooklyn Art Library. The theme that I was given for my sketchbook was "This is not a sketchbook," so I looked into ways of making a sketchbook look like something other than it was, eventually creating a series of stencils that could be applied to the cover of the sketchbook, including a cheerleader, Santa, and an elephant. Towards the end of January, I moved to London for a placement at Art Below. I had decided to continue with the Happiness Project, and being in London gave me the opportunity to reach more people, particularly through the London Underground. I came up with many ideas around the Underground and how its users are constantly bombarded with information, making only the really unusual stand out. This brought me to the use of humour in art, and I intend to have a comedian placed in one of the busking spots on the Underground. I have made inquiries into this, and I am currently searching for the right comedian for the job. Art Below is a small company specialising in displaying posters or artwork on the billboards on the London Underground. During my 6-week internship, I coordinated their March campaign,
which involves selecting artwork, getting it approved by the Underground, selecting the station it will be exhibited in, and keeping in regular contact with the artists, making sure they understood the process. I also created several digital mock-ups of future campaigns and illustrations for the website. I helped out with the installation of a new artwork on the plinth in the Parliament Square Peace Camps, which later made the news, and I also spent some time assisting the director, Ben Moore, with his own artwork, which is very similar in concept to my own, and so I found it very rewarding.
We worked together to produce a collection of stickers that were intended to be stuck on top of the no smoking signs on the London Underground. They were designed to be slightly obscure and to make people smile whenever they see them. They worked very well on the Underground. This is probably because people were in a situation where they are likely to pay attention to their surroundings out of sheer boredom. I exhibited the same stickers at the Creative Transit Free-for-all in the Cavendish Bar. It was interesting to see the stickers outside of their intended context, but I don't think they were as noticed as they were when they were on the tube. This is probably because I placed them in areas where you would normally get no smoking signs or other instructional information, so people will be less likely to pay attention. This has inspired me to look at signs that people do pay attention to, and how they could be changed in a humorous way.
Art Below was the perfect internship for me, as it allowed me to work with a professional artist, develop my own practice, make industry contacts, and gain insight into how organisations work. I developed a great sense of independence, and a result of my internship at Art Below, a gallery-owning client of theirs has offered me an internship over summer. Ben mentioned on several occasions before I left that he would be happy to offer me a job after my degree, which is something I will be seriously considering.
On my return from London, I joined in on the Friday project. The aim is to create new artwork every Friday that at the end of the day can be displayed in a public environment. There is also a bit of emphasis on creating happy surprises for the travelling public. The Friday project is the logical next step from my previous Happiness project. My favourite Friday project to date was called Snippets of Happiness. In this we created our own bookmarks using handmade paper and letterpress technique. We then left these bookmarks in various places around the university library, some hidden, others more on show. Another Friday project that I was personally fond of was the origami that we set up at the Creative Transit Free-for-all at the Cavendish Bar. Several people got involved with this, and it emphasised the community aspect of the Friday project. We will carry on with the Friday project as long as possible, as it is a fantastic way of trying out simple ideas in a public environment, as well as keeping us motivated and providing a break from longer projects. As I previously mentioned, I was inspired to look at different kinds of signs to find out if people would pay attention to them. Still being in London mode, I experimented with the names of different tube stations. It seems logical that people will look at the tube station names to find out where they are, even if they are regular commuters or tourists. I tried experimenting with anagrams of the station names, but found that often I preferred to just change one or two letters. I would like to take this to the next level, and show the sign alterations in a public space. I should be able to do this by producing a vinyl sticker that could be stuck over the existing text on the sign. I began to think about other signs that are usually given attention to, and came up with the idea of altering road signs. I began experimenting with signs that involve words rather than symbols, and thought about how these words could be changed but still convey the same meaning. I then moved on to what this may mean in practical terms, before moving on again to the completely ridiculous. Although I wouldn't want to display these signs on actual roads for safety reasons, I may consider making the pedestrian version and displaying them on pavements or other walkways. I consider the road signs to be a continuation of the Humour in Arts project. In order to continue with this project, I thought about what makes me laugh and have discovered that my favourite kind of comedy is based around the unexpected and changing the conventional. Wordplay is also a common element and has been proved to work in a visual format in Richard Prince's joke paintings.
Stephen Doyle's capturing the right issues inspired me to try wordplay, but using objects as a means of communication. This eventually led me to create a briefcase made from underwear. Before doing this, I made a list of hundreds of conjoined words before deciding which ones had the potential to become a source of humour through misinterpretation. This is a very basic form of comedy, but one I feel happy using as the lack of complexity makes it understandable by everybody.
During my attempts early in the year to pinpoint specific interests within my work, I created a comparison table. I found this to be quite useful and continued to add to it as the year went on. This is a selection of the most important comparison points, and it shows clearly that in the later part of the year I acted on my long-standing instinct to include humour in my work, which resulted in the Happiness Project. My most recent project, the Wordplay Project, seems to involve all of the important aspects of my previous work. The table also shows that my time spent at Art Below was very relevant, as the work I produced there fits in perfectly with the rest of my current practice. It could be that my time there brought out tendencies that I was already working towards, as well as taking inspiration from the work of Ben Moore. The table also suggests that I was right in my decision to halt with the glass work that I was doing around the same time as my animation. It links into absolutely none of my other projects and can be seen as a bit of a deviation from my normal practice. The Shelter project can also be seen as a bit of a deviation, but I learnt a lot about my practice by completing it the way I did, so I do not regret that in the slightest. The opposite can be said for the 10,000 Trees project, as although several matches can be seen to other projects, I would not consider it a success. This leads me to the conclusion that adaptation of normality is a key part of my practice, and that animation is not my calling. This chart has allowed me to notice strong links between my favourite projects and whether or not they have included humour and been intended for public display. This connection is something that I intend to pay attention to and explore further. A surprising revelation looking back was that how similar the ideas behind the summer project and the sketchbook project were to the rest of my work this year. I hadn't noticed this previously, and I considered them to be almost separate from my other projects. Thinking about it, these links make sense, as both of the projects seem to have been subconsciously based on the key principles that make up my current practice. A collection of visual, light-hearted work made by adapting what is commonly seen with a slight twinge of comedy intended for public display.
One of my other networking activities included helping out regularly as an assistant at the Cube Gallery. I provided information to visitors and assisted with exhibition changeovers. It gave me a lot of insight into the running of a professional art gallery and the basics of exhibition management. This came in really handy when I was group spokesperson for the second year's collective in the Free for Arts Festival 2010. The second year collective became known as Creative Transit, and I was the main point of contact for them regarding questions about the exhibition. I helped gather information from artists, helped organise the space, and generally assisted with organisation. It was quite stressful and time-consuming, but really improved my organisational skills. As well as being constantly on the lookout for opportunities, I decided to create my own with the continuation of Creative Transit. Myself and Rebecca Wild are heading up the search for exhibition opportunities, as well as organising these exhibitions and events.
Our most recent event was Creative Transit Art Free-for-All at the Cavendish Bar, that featured around 15 artists. By working together, we overcame quite big problems with the venue to make the event an overall success. We intended to get live musicians to play at the event, but because of the problems with the venue, this wasn't possible. We will try to do this again at our future events, as it will be brilliant to bring together people from all kinds of creative practices. The next major event for Creative Transit will be the Free for Arts Festival in October, although we are hoping to hold some more events over the summer.
Overall, I've enjoyed overseeing the collective, as it has given me the opportunity to put into practice skills I've previously learnt. One of the biggest challenges we face is encouraging artists to respond with the information when needed. This was often solved, though, with face-to-face contact or a phone call rather than emails or other less personal methods of communication. Towards the start of the year, I exhibited the Punk project from last year in Blackpool's Winter Gardens as part of the Rebellion Punk Festival. I was able to use my experience as an exhibitor to find out what the artists expect of the event organisers, which helped with the Free for Arts Festival and current Creative Transit events.
I am also part of the Xeon Young Curators group. At the moment we're helping out with current Xeon exhibitions, but later in the year we'll be having our own exhibition, as well as having our own exhibition space at the Manchester Mela Festival over the summer. Most recently we helped select the objects for the 100 Objects of Hume exhibition, which is based around the past and potential future of the area. A few of us also worked with Sally from the 169A printmaking studios to host a screen printing workshop for primary school children, based around the previous exhibition at the Xeon Centre.
I feel as though I may have concentrated on networking too much this year, although this isn't a decision I regret. It would have been foolish not to embrace the opportunity to branch out into the creative community, and I'm sure the skills and experiences I've gained will greatly assist my endeavours during next year and after university.